I love Invincible. Written by Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman and first released as an indie comic in 2003, the series began its eventual meteoric rise very slowly. Mostly overshadowed by the wildly popular Walking Dead, nobody really paid any attention to Invincible at first. That was until it was picked up for a straight-to-series order by Amazon Prime Video. It was fully animated, and Season 1 was released on March 25th, 2021. Utilizing one of the best first episodes in recent TV history, along with one of the biggest memes of that year, Invincible catapulted itself to the top of the charts. The series said goodbye to the indie title and went straight to mainstream. However, a series isn't defined only by its first episode, and fans were pleased to find that not just the first, but all episodes were chock full of intense action, expertly crafted storytelling, and some of the most well-written and in-depth characters to come out of the animated superhero genre. Invincible to most was a well-needed breath of fresh air. Fast forwarding to today, we've had another 2 seasons fully released, both continuing the momentum that Season 1 initially gave the show, and the finale of the most recent season, which is Season 3, rivals the Season 1 finale in my personal opinion. But while I was watching that Season 3 finale, I started thinking about something that didn't ever sit right with me. It was like a wrench in an expertly crafted machine. One specific character who doesn't seem to have the usual title of well-written. You guessed it, probably because you saw it in the title. Not you, we already know all about you. It's Adam Eve. Before I talk about this horribly written character, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It helps me out a ton, and it supports my dream of doing YouTube full time. Also, a little bit of clarification, this video is only going to be on the TV show, well, for the most part, and it won't use much information from the comics. I don't even really know that much about the comics, but from what I hear, they are very different from the TV show anyways, so we should be fine. There will be spoilers for all current seasons of the show, and the Adam Eve spin-off episode, but you knew that. Okay, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the video. One thing I always appreciated about Invincible is that it's one of the only superhero shows that takes logic into account when creating a story that's based on superpowers. One that immediately comes to mind is Red Rush, Invincible's version of the Flash. Super speed is one of the most heavily criticized powers in all of fiction due to just how crazy overpowered it is. Being able to move and perceive at such an elevated level of speed means you can pretty much instantly win a fight against anyone who isn't a speedster. Writing issues can ripple out so easily when it comes to writing a speedster. Like in the CW's Flash, Barry Allen can run so fast that he can phase through matter and he can travel time, but he can't stop a guy holding a gun. Invincible makes sure to be careful with Red Rush and use logic. In their fight against the Mauler twins, the Guardians of the Globe use Red Rush's abilities to evacuate civilians and reduce damage on society because he isn't strong enough to fight against the twins. This makes complete sense because, yeah, you're fast, but you're not strong enough to beat these giant buff blue dudes. So yeah, your power is perfectly suited for damage control. Also, when Red Rush speeds these people away from the action, the people he holds onto throw up from moving so fast, which again makes complete sense. You don't just get to go that fast without any kind of backlash. In my opinion, the scene I'm about to show you is a perfect example of Invincible's relationship between superpowers and logic. So Red Rush is having a nice picnic with his girlfriend. Unfortunately, he has to speed off and stop a villain and is able to do so instantly due to his super speed. He gets back in time to where his girlfriend wouldn't have noticed, but forgets that he has his suit on. He then becomes vulnerable with his girlfriend and explains how his power, specifically his hyper-perception, affects him, and how regular conversations feel like hours to him. The reason I really like this example is that it shows him just being a regular person. Past his suit and his superpowers, he is just a regular dude. And it also gives a little bit of insight into some of the challenges that come with having a superpower. This consistency with logic is seen with almost everyone in the show. Like how Duplicate hides her main body and sends out copies of herself to do all the fighting in order to not put herself in danger. Or how Mark first struggles with learning how to fly. The one character who has none of this logic that the show holds so dear is Adam Eve. Even with all the hoops the show jumps through and limitations they set on Eve, she still should be so much more powerful than the show allows her to be. So I'm going to start where she does with her spin-off episode that explains her backstory. This one-shot episode was created between the productions of Season 1 and Season 2, and it shows the viewer where Adam Eve came from and what it was like for her growing up with her powers and learning how to use them. And in my opinion, this episode is the start of a lot of Eve's writing shortcomings in the show. The writers also make a lot of safety nets for Eve here that could be used to explain why she's reluctant to use her powers to their full potential. Let's get some context of the episode before I talk about the major issues. So Samantha, otherwise known as Eve, was the child of this woman named Polly and another unknown man. She was created as a lab experiment for the US government under Dr. Elias Brandyworth, and Eve's mom was hooked up to these tube thingies to create a superpowered baby. The the goal being the creation of the ultimate superweapon. As the baby's progress continued, Dr. Brandyworth stopped seeing Eve as just an experiment and instead started to see her for what she really was, a real human baby, mostly due to the pleas from Polly to give her a regular life. Knowing that she wouldn't get this regular life the way things were going, Dr. Brandyworth stole Eve from the government and gave her away to a family who had just had a miscarriage, saying that Eve died and leaving the family none the wiser. Fast forward a couple years, Eve has grown up, but her parents think that she's very strange. She doesn't socialize much, and she's always drawing out these weird drawings that make no sense to anyone. That is, until her 16-year-old babysitter finds out that the things she's drawing aren't nonsense, they're molecules. Eve's parents decide to put her into a gifted school, and she's even able to make a friend. But the only thing that she's good at is science. Everything comes to a head when, after a bad fight between her and her dad, she accidentally turns her textbook into glass. She figures out that she is able to alter reality and turn anything into anything else. Now comes the first safety net that the writers place. Eve is just relaxing in her treehouse with her friend Val, like they usually do, and she decides to show off her newfound powers. She asks her friend to not tell anyone what she's about to show her. She takes a spearmint-flavored stick of gum and turns it into cherry, and Val looks visibly uncomfortable. Then she takes a quarter and makes it have Val's face on it with the text President Val on top. She gets even more uncomfortable. Then Eve makes a glowing pink ball and makes it spin around Val, trying to mess with her, and Val just freaks out. From this point on, Val just literally never talks to Eve again. Like, just never. Like, Eve will try to call out to her, and she just won't say anything to her. She says, like, normal people shouldn't be able to do this, and she just leaves. I find this entirely so hard to believe, and is only in place in the story to make Eve all weird about using her powers. I understand the whole parents think she's weird thing, because to be fair, she was writing random letters over and over and drawing these weird symbols that her parents had no clue what to make of. But imagine that you're still a child and you have a friend that all of a sudden can just warp reality itself. They can literally create anything out of nothing and are inviting you along to have fun with it. I don't know about you, but I feel like I and any other kid would have took full advantage of this and been completely accepting. But let's just say that Val is an outlier here. I feel like it would have been much more likely that Val is freaked out at first and runs off, but then comes back to Eve a day after or something and slowly starts to accept her. To be fair, someone telling you that they have the powers to warp reality itself is a little jarring, but her completely just not being friends with Eve anymore is a little hard to believe. This part of the episode feels so forced and is only in place to make Eve feel guilty about her powers, contributing to the later fight with her siblings and her issues in the future with using her powers and her search for purpose. It's fine to have a character with these traits, but the only reason they do it is to limit her potential because they have no idea how to write a reality warper. And the way they go about giving her these traits is also so flawed. Okay, so continuing on, after Eve loses her friend, she starts to become more and more adventurous with her powers. While messing around with shapes in her room, she creates a superhero mask and puts it on. And then, at long last, we see the first unfortunate sighting of... But I'll be calling it the pink shield from now on. So she hops on her pink shield. No, actually... is way funnier. I'm just gonna say that entire thing every time I refer to it. Okay, so she hops on and sneaks out of her house using it to fly. She goes downtown and has some fun creating air slides and jumping around with her powers. And little nitpick here, I feel like she gets the hang of them way too easily. Like, she just got them a few days ago and is completely comfortable jumping off of the sides of buildings. But yeah, she jumps around and even learns how to fly with this pink jet propulsion looking thing. And here comes the most important part of her little adventure. She gets into a fight with these two burglars trying to steal some dogs from a dog pound. She, being a reality warper, wins the fight, of course. But keep this in mind, she wins the fight by turning their masks into a heavy metal. Dr. Brandyworth approaches her after the scuffle and asks to talk to her. And he tells Eve the truth about where she comes from and tells her that her parents are not her real parents. The most important thing that Dr. Brandyworth tells Eve is that he implanted a mental block in Eve's mind to make it so she can't manipulate the matter of anything living. We see her try to manipulate a squirrel earlier when testing out the extent of her powers, and now we understand why she wasn't able to. So these are the two things to remember. She cannot manipulate living things, but she can manipulate anything that isn't living tissue. So for example, the mask that the two burglars were wearing. Just remember both of these things because they create a lot of issues later. As of right now, the mental block thing is kind of a necessary decision, and it's something I can understand from the writer's standpoint. It creates a few questions like, how was it even implanted? Or wouldn't it make more sense that the blocks just make Eve not want to use her powers on living things? Like, I don't understand how she can actively attempt to use her powers on something using her free will, but it just doesn't work. But to be fair, had the writers let Eve use the full extent of her powers, she could just win any fight instantly, and there would basically be no need for a story. All conflicts would have the the looming question over them of where was Eve during all of this, or couldn't Eve have just like turned them into a block of cheese? So Eve continues on with her life, continuing to use her powers as a superhero, and she even creates the Adam Eve persona. And the very first fight that she gets into under this new persona creates issues within seconds of the fight even starting. Okay, so she has this whole fight with the cyborg dude and even gets pretty beat up. She keeps using her shield to block lasers from his laser cannon and to attack. But as we literally just saw in her previous fight, she can affect anything that isn't living tissue. And last I checked, a giant laser cannon and body armor isn't naturally occurring or a part of any kind of living tissue. So why doesn't she just turn them into literally anything? Air, glass, turn it into lava and burn him? Either way, she could have instantaneously ended the fight. And I don't even want to hear that she didn't know how to do this yet, because again, she did this in the last fight. So the same day she gets into another fight in the city because the government knows who she really is now due to reckless use of her powers. After the government thought that they lost Eve, they tried to basically create a replacement for her. But without Dr. Brandyworth, they really couldn't get anywhere close. They take all these people and turn them into these weird monster dudes and talk to them like they're failures. But now that they know Eve is alive, they send these failed test subjects after her. And the entire fight, they're basically just guilt-tripping her about having her powers and how she's perfect and they're all failures. Eve wins against them, but gets knocked out and taken to the lab where she was given her powers. She finds out her real mom is still alive and in a test tube, but the main antagonist government guy, Steve Erickson, shoots the glass in the tube and she starts to die. Then that same government dude gets in a fight with Dr. Brandyworth and shoots him too. This is the biggest problem with the entire episode. When Eve sees her mom and Dr. Brandyworth dying, she starts to glow pink and manipulate living tissue. The one thing that was established that she couldn't do is immediately overwritten. And the way she uses it is so dumb. She manipulates the government guy and the scientist guy and makes them lose all their memories of her. So many issues with this decision. First of all, if it is possible for Eve to override her mental block with strong emotions, why doesn't she just try and train herself to be able to override it whenever she wants? I feel like with enough practice she could figure out how to do this. Because to be fair, it is her own brain and it is her own emotions. Also, how did she know exactly how to remove memories from people? And it isn't even just all memories, it's specifically memories of herself. And also, why doesn't she even make an attempt to save Dr. Brandyworth and Polly while she literally had the ability to manipulate any part of the human body? The reason that she even entered this powered up form was because she thought that they died. But you never know, they could still be alive. Why not just try and heal them? Like I said, I understand having the mental block there to keep her powers in check, but there were so many other ways for Eve to leave this situation with the same outcome, but without breaking the only limitation that's placed on her. This decision creates so many discrepancies later on too, and all within one episode. So let's now fast forward in the story and see how she's doing after growing up a few years. Surely she'll have a better grip on her powers by now, and hopefully some of these writing decisions we saw in the special episode were just a fluke. So now that we have Eve's backstory, we're going to jump back to season 1 of the show, which actually came before the special episode. But chronologically, this comes after when she was a little kid, figuring out all of her powers. Adam Eve's first appearance in the show is in season 1, episode 2, titled Here Goes Nothing. She appears in Mark's very first fight as a hero against a Flaxan invasion, which are these weird alien dudes from another dimension. And the very first time her power is used, she creates a shield out of her. Okay, well, it was a laser coming right at Mark. I understand at that time. Not much you can do there. Surely she switches it up, right? Let's see. Okay, we got pink shield, another pink shield. Okay. Oh, hey, pink lightning bolt. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so nothing has changed. Eve still just seems to want to create these pink shields as defense. She does a couple things different, like she does this pink bubble thing, but when your power is the ability to change anything into anything, this is a pretty lackluster show of it. So the main threat here is the Flaxan's guns. Why doesn't she just create a pink shield around her teammates and go fly around all of them and turn their guns and tanks into air? Why doesn't she create guns for her teammates to use? Even if her powers make it so that she has to know how something is created to recreate it, why hasn't she done more studying into how certain useful weapons and support items are made? We know that she wants to help people and make a difference as a superhero, so why hasn't she done these things? So in this fight at least, she does a whole lot of nothing. And I know the Flaxans start aging really fast and they lose the fight anyways, but still, she could have ended this fight before that even happened. So yeah, Eve's power hasn't really evolved too much since she was just discovering them, but she definitely did as a person. She seems a lot more confident now, and she's even part of the teen team, which is a group of young superheroes. She meets Mark and they talk about what it's like to be a new hero, and she introduces him to the teen team. Then the Flaxens come back once again, and Eve finally uses her powers the way she should be using them. She creates this big pink wave of some fire-like thing to damage all the Flaxens and their weapons. This is how her powers should be used in a situation like this. An area of effect attack. I don't even care what this pink wall is actually made of because she literally has the power to make anything she wants. I'm just going to take the show's word for its destructive capability. After this long-awaited display of her power, she unfortunately does something so extremely stupid that it cancels out any aura she gained in that last attack. Since time runs differently for Flaxens than it does for humans, they have been able to make many technological advances since their last fight because it has been decades for them and 3 days for the humans. So along with other new weapons, the Flaxens now have these attack drone thingies. And while she's fighting them off, one of them manages to get a hold of Eve's face. Now, I don't recall drones having any living tissue, so tell me why, instead of Eve just turning this drone into thin air, her dumbass just decides to sit there on the floor while she's being actively electrocuted. It isn't even the regular type of electrocution where you can't control your muscles, because Eve is fully moving around and trying to pull this thing off of her face. So the show can't even use that as an excuse. It almost feels like the show didn't know what Eve's power was yet, but that's physically impossible because the Invincible comic came out in 2003. Even if it was actually Kirkman who made this mistake of not defining Eve's powers from the start in the comic book, then why didn't the writers and animators of the show just change it? We know they're absolutely not averse to changing the story around here and there, so whatever. Even after that extremely stupid display, the episode continues. The Flaxens come back for a third and final time, and Eve just uses her shields again. I wish that this was just a first episode of Fluke, but no. The first time Eve does anything other than make random pink shit is episode 5. We are over halfway done with the first season, and this is the first time she even thinks about actually using her power. If you're watching this in 2021 when this is first coming out, this is about to be the first true example of what Eve can really do. And so how does Eve showcase this? Yeah, she makes a D-O-R-E. A door.
Does he know about the D-O-R-E? The door.
I'd actually like to break this scene down because it expands, no pun intended, the limits of what Eve can do with her powers. So after Eve breaks up with Rex and the teen team breaks up, she gets in a fight with her toxic ass parents about the whole situation. And they think that she should forgive Rex for cheating on her because she needs to be protected as a hero. To prove that Eve can protect herself, she says,
I can do anything I want on my own. I can do anything I want on my own. I can do anything I want on my own.
And just and stretches the entire house. Literally just modifies the width on that bitch. Many important things to break down here, and most of them have to do with the extent of her other main limitation, which I guess I'll talk about now. So the other limitation with her powers, other than her mental block, isn't really talked about until later on, but it's the fact that it takes her a lot of energy to manipulate matter. So she's not like Dr. Manhattan, which I guess I can understand because this story is about Mark, so she can't be super overpowered. But just note that in this scene, she is able to manipulate her entire house and then fly off without even breaking a sweat. In fact, she does it while hitting this pose, this JoJo-ass pose, bro. The way that I like to think about Adam Eve's power stamina is by comparing it to stamina of running. So let's say in this scene, manipulating her house is like a quick sprint, because she only does it for a little bit. But if she were to continue modifying her house, she would slowly become more and more tired out. That's the way I think her power works. So like turning her book into glass would be akin to a light jog if she were to continue that power output at the same level. This would be a completely fine limitation to have her, but the issue is I don't think the writers even have a single clue as to what Eve's true stamina is. The level of it feels like it keeps jumping around at different points in the story to best suit whatever is needed at the time, and sometimes it just feels completely non-existent. For example, in the next episode, episode 6, titled You Look Kinda Dead, Eve is fresh out of the teen team, fresh out of a relationship, and fresh out of a big fight with her parents. After she helps Amber out with the soup kitchen for the less fortunate, she realizes that there's so much more that she could be doing for the world than fighting off alien dudes. No clue how it took her this long to come to this epiphany, but she goes off to do things that actually matter, something that we know she always wanted to do when she was a little kid. So she tells her parents that she's moving out to help people and flies into the forest in search of purpose. Once there, she does all of the following in the span of a day, and keep note because this is going to be on the test. She makes an entire treehouse, makes this giant pink ball thing to extinguish a forest fire, and regrows all of the trees that were burned down. She saves these two people from a landslide, and this is the stupidest one. She grows this entire field of grapes for these farmers. Keep in mind that she is flying and smiling throughout this entire thing without a single bead of sweat or moment of fatigue. When she gets back to her treehouse, it's nighttime, and the only thing that has changed is that she has a little bit of grime on her from a day's work. So on top of everything she's already done, we can also assume that she's been doing things like this for the entire day, because all of the scenes that were shown of her take only seconds to complete, and it's nighttime when she gets back home. So screw widening her house, this is such a big expansion of her stamina and what her power is able to do. Let's give her the best case scenario and say that she actually is extremely tired, but all the good work that she's been doing makes it look like she isn't. She still has been able to go the entire day doing things like this, and everything else we haven't seen, and still being able to fly all the way home at the end of it. Keep all of these things in mind for when I talk about the conquest fight later on. Once again, it's fine to have these limits on Adam Eve, and like I said, I do understand why they're in place when it comes to the overall story. But with a power like reality warping, the things that Eve can do are practically limitless. Clear boundaries need to be defined when a power like this one is in play. It feels like such a cop-out when Eve is able to save herself from any situation because she got mad enough. And with a power like reality warping, I would hope that the writers of the show would come up with something more meaningful or creative when it comes to these dire situations that Eve gets into. Season 1 manages to create all these flaws and issues within 8 episodes. Let's see what they can do with 8 more. Eve's power in Season 2 sees a steep decline in terms of how well they're written. Her power stamina is absolutely not consistent with Season 1, and she just continues to not use the full extent of her powers, mainly in fights. The first time we see Eve use her powers again in Season 2 is in Episode 2, which I will not be saying the name of, you can go look it up if you want to. She's continuing her goal of doing more humanitarian work and decides that she's going to go help construction workers rebuild a building. Then, after she does this, a citizen points out a plot of land. Wait, go back. Did you see that? So yeah, with this reference point that we have to go off of where Eve spent an entire day manipulating extremely large areas worth of matter, she is now apparently getting gassed after fixing one little corner of a building. 2 things to note here. Number 1, fixing this building is the very first thing that she does in this day, and she is completely uninjured while doing so. Keep this in mind because it'll come up later. And 2, the reason for her fatigue can't be due to the complexity of what she's doing, because previously we have seen her make an entire treehouse that, this is me being generous, is 2 times as large from the ground up, and then continue to fly all around doing all these large tasks for the entire day. Seriously, either continue to let Eve be overpowered and right around that, or have some other reason as to why she's more fatigued here. So Eve goes on to also turn an unused plot of land into a playground at the request of the mother who stood up for her, and she moves on with her day. She then goes back to her parents' house to check up on them, and they tell her that they've been struggling financially after Eve's dad lost her job. So Eve decides to help them by stocking the fridge with groceries and turning an apple into gold for them to sell. Her dad gets extremely mad at her, and when she returns back to their house a few days later, Eve comes to find all of the groceries and the gold apple in the trash. She walks inside and gets in another fight with her dad, where he reveals the park that she made has collapsed, and the reason that the city didn't want to build anything there for so long was because the ground was unstable. After this, Eve starts to spiral. So the 2 things contributing towards Eve's downward spiral of emotions regarding her purpose and her powers is this collapsing park and her dad who won't accept help from her. Both of these can easily be explained away as lazy writing. I understand feeling bad about the park thing because people were injured. But if Eve really wanted to continue to help, she could very easily just work with city planners, architects, and construction workers to learn how to actually build these things safely. And the thing with her dad is only because he's a stubborn old dude who thinks he's too good to accept help from his daughter, who he sees as below him. Doesn't this feel exactly like the Adam Eve special episode? It felt like fate was being bent by the writers to create this weird notion towards Eve's powers, and it's continuing here. But whatever, Eve has these emotions now whether they make sense or not, so let's see how she handles them. Eve decides to go to Amber and William's college, hoping to get some support from her peers in these hard times. With Mark out on his space mission, Amber and William invite Eve to brunch the next morning, so Eve stays in her old headquarters for a night. While staying in these headquarters, Eve hears a loud crash, only to discover, oh my god, Okay, you know what? This is actually great. Eve needs a win here, and this one should be easy because all Eve has to do is turn this guy's cyborg ass into literally anything else. He is just a regular dude with armor and a laser.
Beat the living shit
no,
out
Eve,
of you.
no,
How's
you
that for a
don't need to
deal?
beat him up.
You want this back?
So yeah, Eve starts to fight Kill Cannon and just decides that she's not going to use her instantly win the fight button. And hey, we even get a callback to their first fight with the stupid pink shield. I feel like the only mental block that Eve should be worrying about is the one that for some reason brings her IQ down to a comfortable 60 whenever she gets into any fight. But hey, I'll give Eve the benefit of the doubt and say that because she was feeling inadequate as a hero or helper or whatever she sees herself as, she just wanted all the smoke with Kill Cannon and just wanted a punching bag. To be fair, that is what seems to be the case when she has lines like this.
Oh, what's the matter? You done already? Get up.
Okay, so now she's fighting Kill Cannon, and they've broken out of the headquarters and onto the Golden Gate Bridge. And despite the many cars and civilians that are now in serious danger around Kill Cannon, Eve continues to just fight with her shield. This dude is essentially just Steven Universe at this point. She's just creating bubbles and shields and stuff. That's the only thing that she knows how to do. Another thing people might say is that Kill Cannon isn't in range of where her power can reach. That would be a somewhat solid argument if she literally didn't do this during their fight. Look at this. I don't even know how long that actually is, but I know for a fact that this means that she was in range to use her powers on him for the entire fight because he never moved any further than this. This was the furthest that he moved. So yeah, now civilians are in danger. They don't have to be, but they are. And Eve just decides to drop this nugget of wisdom.
Shooting. I guess when your arm's a gun, you really only have one trick.
Like, yes, Eve, you're so close to getting it. All this guy can do is shoot with a gun that is made out of non-living tissue. Can we put 2 and 2 together? So Eve then deflects a laser from Kill Cannon and it hits this car with this family in it, which gets knocked over into the water. She tries to save them, but Kill Cannon, who mind you should already be defeated by now, comes over and stomps on her, making the car fall into the water as she loses her grasp. Eve dives down and saves them, and do you want to know the best part? We never actually get to hear what happened to them, like ever again. She pulls them out of the water, and there's this whole scene in front of the paramedics where she's just saying, please make sure they're okay, and all we ever hear about them from Eve again is that they were hurt. All of this could have been completely avoided had Eve just used her power the way that she literally knows it can be used. I know Mark was having some issues feeling that what his dad did to all those people was his fault, even though the situation was out of his control, but this one is 100% Eve's fault. The next time we see her using her powers, she is standing on top of Kill Cannon, and she's tied him up in these pink rope things. So, that night at the Golden Gate Bridge, she didn't even capture him. She just nearly killed 2 people and let him dip. Let him just skedaddle on away. Also, why couldn't she just have spawned these ropes on him in their first fight? Ignoring the fact that she could have just manipulated his very non-living armor into something else, Eve can see and manipulate all space around her. This means that not even just with Kill Cannon, but anyone she fights, she could easily tie them up in these ropes or encase their body in metal. We see her do this to the 2 hoods the burglars are wearing in her first ever fight. So how is the air surrounding people any different? And it's not like it's hard for her to do complex maneuvers like this with her power. I'm under the impression that she is just able to make anything regardless of the complexity and precision that it requires. Like this time that she changes a family photo to include people that were never even photographed, or once again when she creates an entire treehouse from scratch. The thing that sucks about these decisions is that it makes Eve come off as an idiot. I really like Eve as a character, but I like to think about her as 2 different parts. There's the superhero part of her, Adam Eve, and there's the regular person part of her, Samantha Eve Wilkins. Especially when her powers are directly related to her development as a character, a level of caution is needed when defining what she can and can't do and what her level of mastery is with her power. Samantha is an amazing character. Eve is not. I do think that she has a couple issues as a character, but I'll talk more about those later. After these couple scenes, we don't see too much more of Eve's powers for this season. She has some more moments with her parents and with Mark, but the story is mostly focused on the action involving Mark for the remainder of the episodes. In retrospect, I think the season did worse in terms of defining Adam Eve's powers in the previous season. Not only did they show her powers working differently than they did before, but there are just so many times where Eve could have instantly ended a fight and just didn't. On top of that, the issues that she has with her powers in the season feel so forced. For some reason, it feels like everyone that has ever come into contact with Eve is working to try and make her feel bad about her powers and make her question her identity. And it feels that way because the writers are really reaching to make that happen. If you thought the varying nature of Eve's stamina and power was bad here, just wait for season 3 because it gets so much worse. In Season 3, Eve is mostly sidelined from the main story to just be Mark's love interest. And on top of the problems that she already had with her powers, they absolutely butcher her character. In previous seasons, they spend so much time defining her as an independent woman who's confident in the person that she is. And it really feels like the only reason that she's even present in Season 3 is to prop up Mark as a character. She very noticeably has less screen time where she's using her powers, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I genuinely could only find one scene that is just about Eve. Every single other scene in the entire season has something to do with helping Mark in a fight or talking about their relationship. I understand Mark is the main character, and if Eve and Mark are together, of course she'll be around him more often. But it just feels like she isn't even her own person anymore. Eve does have 2 other fight scenes in the season outside of the Conquest fight, but they all just have the same issues that I've outlined before. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but they're still worth pointing out, so I'll just go through them more quickly. In this fight underground against Doc Seismic, even many other characters are trapped in these egg thingies. Mark is asked to wake Eve up to get them out of the eggs, and from the moment Eve wakes up to when they eventually get released by some Reanimen, there is like an entire minute of time that passes. Mark was sitting there begging her to get them out of there, and she just did absolutely nothing. And after this, by the way, she is shown to stand and walk completely fine and even to fly around, so we know her powers were intact. When the prison that Mark and Eve are hired on to protect is attacked by, I don't want to say it wrong, but I think it's Mr. Liu, the dragon dude. When the dragon dude attacks the prison, a bunch of prisoners are let out, one of those prisoners being Multi-Paul. Eve once again wastes time and energy trying to trap Paul in one of these slow-moving pink boxes when she could easily just change his clothes into metal or something. She traps him in the end, but it ends up being a duplicate. In the same fight, she makes this big flail weapon for Mark, and for some insane reason that I can't even begin to comprehend, she decides that she's going to go inside the ball part for no reason at all. She doesn't even like do anything while inside there. Like, she doesn't make some spikes or like try to like grapple onto the dragon like after it hits him or anything like that. She just does it for the love of the game. She just wants to go inside there. Okay, now that those are aside, it's time for the main event. The magnum opus of Eve's issues and the entire reason why I even decided to make this video. The fight between Invincible and Conquest. I believe this fight alone highlights everything wrong with Eve, so let's just get into it. So Eve joins the fight quite a bit after Mark does, and the last time Mark had even seen Eve, she was still in the hospital and unconscious. But now she's back and she's ready to fight. So, first issue, she once again pretty much only uses her to fight, but with a little more usage of her full power sprinkled in. Her actually do get used well here. But even knowing that their opponent is a Viltrumite, I really can't help but think that there was more that she could have done with the ability to warp reality. There's this one time where she makes a hammer with spikes on the side and then just doesn't use the spikes. She hits Conquest with the flat part of the hammer. I guess we're going for style points now too. There are 2 times that she uses her transmutation in this fight. The first time is when she changes a spike ball that Conquest was about to smash into a bunch of water. And I really just don't see the point of this. She's just wasting more energy. The second instance of transmutation is, in my opinion, the only time she has ever used even a fraction of her potential in a fight. As Conquest is about to hit her, she changes the density of the air to completely stop him in his tracks. I watched this episode with a friend, and out loud I said, finally, because it just felt so good to see Eve do something with her power that actually made any sense. So then, of course, following this, Eve gets absolutely bodied because she's thrown up some pink shields against a Viltrumite, and now she's bleeding out on the ground. This is the next thing I don't like. Eve essentially does nothing in this fight. Like, Conquest does not look battered at all by her. He just gives her a compliment or two, saying things like, clever, and stuff like that. So yeah, she does nothing in this fight, gets turned into a donut, and it really only feels like she was there to send Mark into a rage mode. So Mark continues to fight Conquest, and Eve breaks her limiter, completely healing herself and sending this giant laser beam at Conquest that actually does enough damage to burn his skin. First of all, her saving herself feels once again like such a cop-out. If she can just save herself anytime she's about to die, then what is the point in any conflict involving her? She literally just has plot armor, and it's not even the kind where it's like the main character, and like of course they're not going to die because it's the main character. It is directly tied to her powers. Secondly, isn't Eve's mental block only supposed to make it so that she can manipulate living tissue? Even though it's a cop-out, under this logic, it does make sense that she's able to manipulate her own body to heal herself. But this laser beam makes no sense. This limit break has gone from bad to worse because now it can just be used as a get-out-of-jail-free card by the writers. Eve healing herself makes the fact that she was just there to send Mark into a frenzy so much worse. The show uses her to make the main character stronger by pretending she's going to die. Then once they're done with that, they immediately bring her back. It just feels like such a cheap way for things to end. And once again, it feels like a tough decision that the show didn't have the balls to make. Either kill Eve and give Mark the strength to defeat Conquest, or don't even use her for that purpose at all, and just have Mark fight him off. Finally, let's talk about Eve's stamina. I know she makes some pretty big things, and I would understand it a little better if the majority of her fatigue came near the end of her fight with Conquest. But I counted, and from the moment she starts the fight to the moment she starts breathing heavy and looking fatigued, all she makes is this pink wall, this pink shield, and this sphere. Keep in mind, the sphere is hollow. I know these items are large, but still, we've seen her grow entire forests and grape fields in a single day. This is what I mean by her stamina level is at whatever the writers think is the most useful. Analyzing the entire fight, we can see that it checks off every single box of Eve's problems. Her stamina levels are completely out of whack, she's only there to prop up Mark, and she breaks her mental limiter as a complete cop-out to save herself and resolve all of the conflict. These are all the issues that I've outlined from all seasons in one fight alone. When thinking about the series as a whole, I wonder if it would have been a better idea from a writing standpoint to just give Eve a completely different power. It's clear that the people working on the show and even Kirkman writing the comic had no idea how much of a challenge having a power like this would be. Most of the fault is, however, on decisions like not more clearly defining Eve's stamina. As she is now, it just feels like one of those characters that gets better if you turn your brain off, and that's really sad to see from a show that clearly takes so much pride in the logic behind powers. Personally, I really like Eve's powers. They are some of the most creative I have seen in any superpower-themed show in recent years. I just wish they had the same level of attention to detail that they apply elsewhere in the show. What's more annoying is the fact that her character is weighed down by her powers at many points in the series. I feel like Invincible does a great job at exploring what it would really be like to be in the situations that some of the characters are in, like Mark and his mom after Omni-Man went on his whole rampage. The pain that you see between them feels so real, and one of the best examples of this characterization is with Eve. Despite the way they go about creating the foundations, Eve's issues with herself, her powers, and her family feel so real. They give insight into why Eve acts the way she does and why she speaks the way she speaks. I just feel like they could have made her struggles so much more impactful if they came from a place that felt more logical or didn't involve her powers. In the future, I really feel like Eve has a chance at being a better character in her powers and in herself, and I really want her to be. But all of that is going to be determined by what the writers do with her in the show. As far as I know, she doesn't get much better in the comics, and that's entirely due to being outside of Kirkman's capabilities as a writer. And if after all of this convincing you still don't believe me, then I'll leave you with this.
The problem is that Eve technically can do so much more with her powers than we ever see.
I will say this, Adam Eve's powers exceed my capabilities as a writer, which has always been a real problem. It's like, what can she do? Anything. So what'd you have her do? I don't know, she made a shovel out of a pink shape.
Another video done. Writing this script was certainly a challenge, probably because I wrote like 3/4 of it in the span of like a day and like 7 hours. And I just like, I just wrote the script. I kind of forgot to eat and I was just writing the entire thing. One thing that I'm trying to work on is, I don't know, I do like making these critique videos, but I'm kind of scared that I'm being a little too harsh with these things. I just want to let you know that everything I've said in this video is completely not serious, like it's just a show. And I think all of the people that are working on Invincible are extremely talented, and I really could not do anything that they do. So maybe in my next video, I'll try to break out of my shell a little bit and create more of a positive video. But I guess that's a decision for a later Sonido. Also, I don't even know if I'm going to follow this myself, but I'm just going to put this out there. My plan is to ramp up how often I'm posting. So if you stick around to the ends of these videos, you probably care enough about my videos, or maybe you don't. I don't know. But I am planning on ramping up the output of my posts. I was sitting in my room and I was like looking at my YouTube studio and I'm just like, wow, I have like a month between posts, or like a month and a half. And honestly, if I want to achieve my goal of becoming a full-time YouTuber, I'm gonna need to work at it like it's a full-time job. I'm going to try my hardest to not get burnt out and start releasing videos a lot quicker. If you've somehow made it all the way to this point of the app session and you still haven't clicked off, even though it's the end of the video and like everyone does by this point, I just want to thank you so much for watching all the way to this point. I am really passionate about what I'm doing here, and it's been my dream ever since I was little. I hope that your experience watching this video was entertaining and it made your day somewhat better or intrigued you in some way. And I will just be forever thankful So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and hopefully I will see you next time. Peace.